Welcome to the Wild Wisdom Podcast, where we learn how to heal our hearts, find our voices, and step into our authentic power as the wild women that we were destined to be. I'm your host, Jessica Love. Settle into whichever way you like to listen to the Wild Wisdom Podcast, and let's get started. I'm here with a very special guest, Cassandra Juniphant. She is a wife, mother, and the founder of Oriara, a self-care company dedicated to empowering modern women with traditional wellness practices. Hey, Cassandra, welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, I'm so glad that you took the time to be here with us today. I just loved your energy when I saw you on my threads, and I love the work that you do with the body ministry. I think that is such a cool way for us to get to connect with our bodies and the divine. So for listeners who aren't familiar with you and your work, can you tell us a little bit more about the body ministry and Oriara?
Yeah. Let's see here. Let me start. Well, I'll start with where you started, the body ministry. In looking for a way to kind of capture what it is that I do, it was one of those things that kind of just dropped in, you know, and it struck that chord that let me know that it was resonant to the work that I do and desire to do and the work that's needed in the collective. And, it's simple. A ministry is just something that is a kind of like a dedicated study for and service. It's a service to people. And so the body ministry is just that. It's like being in service to your body. And when that dropped in, it felt like directly in my heart chakra. And I was like, that's it. That's how I'm going to introduce this to the collective. This is how I'm going to introduce this to women. But Oriara, my company, I founded almost 4 years ago in September. And Oriara actually has an interesting, origin story as well. It's actually Yoruba. So Ori is purpose and Ara is body in the Yoruba tradition. And so there's a third element called Imi, which is spirit. But in the Yoruba tradition, it's very clear that our body is a part of our purpose. We're not born into it on accident. We're not just bodies, but we are souls that chose these bodies to carry out our purpose. And so, the two of those things combined, Oriara and the body ministry, kind of give you a good idea of what it is that I do and what I teach, and how I'm contributing, the kind of elevating the collective consciousness of women and helping, playing my role in supporting them and fulfilling their purpose.
Wow. Do you remember where you were when you had that download? I'm so curious.
Oh, that's a great question. I don't remember. I think I was in bed, actually. I want to say it was like one of those liminal state kind of things. I don't remember if I was waking up or going to sleep, but it was one of those type moments, but I don't remember specifically. Yeah.
That's all right. I'm always curious when I talk to really inspired women, especially women who are founders of their own projects and companies. Like, where were you when you got that download? Because I like you, I really believe in divine timing. I really believe in getting downloads from the divine. And
Yeah.
I feel like your tradition with your Yoruba is what it's called. I'd love to ask you more about that in a second. It really aligns with astrology because many astrologers believe that we choose our birth charts and we choose the unique gifts that we'll have in this lifetime and also the challenges we'll have. And so, as I mentioned to you, we are astrology girlies here. I have to ask, what are your big three placements of sun, moon, and rising? Yeah. I have guesses in my head, but I want to keep an open mind.
I'm so curious to know what your guesses are, but I'll share. So I am a Scorpio sun.
I was guessing Scorpio.
Were you really?
Yes, I was guessing. No one ever tell you that. I love when I get it right.
No one ever gets that, to be honest. Like everyone thinks I'm a fire sign, but I'm a Scorpio moon, a Scorpio sun, a Pisces moon, and a Capricorn rising. And so I'm a very watery person. I've got a Scorpio stellium. I have no air signs in my entire chart. Like I'm very much a watery, groundy kind of gal.
I would have guessed earth and water from you, but you want to know what I think it is
I always associate people who are really into fitness, like specifically physical fitness with fire. But I want to say that Scorpio is like the fiery water sign.
Yeah,
So maybe that's part of it too.
yeah,
To me, my reading from you, just seeing you on social media and connecting with you now, is more like watery, intuitive. So I'm
I
not
love it.
shocked. Do you also have any art forms that you do with your Pisces moon, like music or painting or anything like that?
I don't. It's funny. I get that question so much, just from random spaces in my life. I do consider movement, I do consider physical fitness art. So, for example, I'm a yogi, and I absolutely believe I am moving art while I'm practicing yoga, 100%.
Tell us more about that. What does that experience like, like being moving art with your body?
Yeah, well, yoga specifically. I mean, all of the forms of movement, I really find I take to, and I can definitely talk more about that as we proceed, because that really is kind of the origin of the body ministry, and how it came to be so important to me was just movement, and actually it was lifting weights. But um, when it came to yoga, though, it was the first time that I felt the direct connection between spirit and body as a in fluidity. I think prior to that, I'd had moments where spirit's always here, but I would be very aware when spirit would drop in or when I was present. It was moments, it was more staccato, it was more, kind of maybe event based. But in the practice of yoga, which, as you know, or may not, but it extends beyond the yoga mat. You're a yogi too. Perfect. So, it extends beyond the yoga mat, and it really is a practice and a way of life. And it is that full integration. Um, and, and, but specifically while performing yoga, the alignment that allows the body to flow looks, it feels like art looks. Does that make sense? Like, to get through a moment, you can muscle your way through, but it doesn't look or feel the same as when you're in alignment. There's something about being in alignment that creates the fluidity that looks like art. It feels like art to me. And so when I'm practicing yoga, I'm definitely in a deep. Most of the times, I'm in a very deep meditative state, and it doesn't matter what kind of yoga. It could be a restorative, it could be yin, or everything in between. But it is being in motion, that and watching the body in motion, feeling the body in motion. That absolutely, yeah, that unity of body and spirit feels like art. It's magical. Yeah, I will never not be a yogi.
Once you become a yogi, you just can't like unsee what you see. I'm hearing throughout your movement journey, there's been this thread of presence. And that
Yes.
for you, it's like being fully present in your body, whether you're strength training or you're doing yoga, like you said, these various movements, it's like that presence allows you to fully express yourself as art.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really powerful creatives and artists that have Pisces moons. So I had to ask because I was curious about how that could tie together. So tell us a little bit about Yoruba. I'm sorry, I'm probably saying it wrong, but I haven't heard of that tradition before. Like, where is it, and what are some of the basic principles? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, well, it's based in West Africa, like Nigerian people, not all, but come from that tradition, and beyond. And I haven't done anything like a ancestry.com or a 23andMe to know specifically like that's my ancestry or not, but just in at the time that download also came to me, it was in deep spiritual, what's the word I'm looking for? It was definitely on my spiritual journey. And a girlfriend actually introduced me to it. So, like I said, there's the three parts to it. There's the body, which is aura. There is Imi, which is spirit. And then there's Ori, which is purpose. And it's just a really clear and clear reverence for all three components being given to us at birth to equip us with everything that we need to fulfill our purpose here, because kind of like you were saying that we choose our astrology, there's also the understanding or the belief that we choose our purpose, we choose our life path, we choose the parents that we're born to, we chose the location that we're born in. There's a lot of and what's going to equip us to fulfill whatever that is are those three things. And so it feels very intentional. It feels very, again, like I use the word reverence a lot because it I think kind of captures the appreciation and the importance of the body and of all of the elements. And yeah, so that's where that comes from.
Well, thank you for explaining that again. Can I just tell you that I did have my ancestry done, well, my twin sister did, and we found out we're like 15% West African.
You're kidding.
I literally had no idea, like, I don't know if this is obvious, but obviously I'm like several races combined. And I just heard the story throughout my life that my dad's white and my mom's Dominican. And in, in the US and also in the Dominican Republic, there's been a ton of, I don't know if anybody's 100% of anything anymore, right? We're all like, our ancestors were moving around and things were happening and we've had so many different lifetimes. And so I never thought anything of it. And yeah, it was fascinating to learn that ethnically I had no Dominican in me. And most of my cultures were, it was like a lot in West Africa, which I thought was so wild, and like Scotland and Italy. I don't know. It was so weird. I was like, what is going on? So I felt a lot of warmth in you were sharing that. And I wanted to share that because I want to look into that.
Oh, I love that. Well, they say, I mean, Dominican, Puerto Rican, just that whole swath, right, of territory. It was, a layover, if you will, from Africa. So, it's very likely, the folks from West Africa had to stop there before, if ever, coming any further. So, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So wild. Okay, so I need to ask you, what was your life like before you found this practice? And when did you, I know you founded your business 4 years ago, but like when did you start doing this in your own life? Body?
So my life prior to all of this was, I think pretty typical, if I could say, working in corporate. I've been in human resources for most of my career. I'm a mother. My kids are teenagers now, but at the time, they were babies. But my kind of origin story for all of this was, being in corporate for 20 years. When I had my youngest, when I had my son, I struggled to lose the baby weight. And I actually dislocated my knee doing jumping lunges one day. And I was furious because I was just starting to see the weight come off. And then I couldn't work out anymore. And so I Googled ways to work out without hurting my knee. And I stumbled across bodybuilding.com. And I was in awe of the women that I saw there. I had never seen women carry muscle. I didn't know women lifted weights. Like I didn't know any of those things. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I need to figure out how to do this. So my next, Google search was for a coach, and I found one within like 10 miles of me. The next closest coach was like over 50 miles. And I was like, okay, there's a sign there. I need to follow up with this. And so I did. And that was in 2012. So that was like, 13 years ago. And I ended up competing. I ended up becoming a bodybuilder. I competed for 5 years, multiple times a year. And I got my pro card in 2016. And on that journey, though, I fell in love with everything I was learning about having a body. And I always found that kind of interesting because I thought, you would think maybe having a baby would put you in touch with your body. You've literally created life. But that wasn't the trigger for me. It was being a bodybuilder and looking at my body every single day in the mirror. That kind of was that. And I started that journey around the same time that I started my spiritual journey. Because the backstory to that was I was married to a minister for 7 years and I left the church. The father of my children is still a minister. But I was not getting along with organized religion. And so I left the church. My marriage ended shortly thereafter. And this was all around the same time that I started bodybuilding. And I was in the gym one day, literally dying, literally like So it was peak week. It was the week before a bodybuilding show when you're dehydrated, you aren't eating carbs, it's just kind of like a miserable time. And I remember thinking, I can't do this. I can't make it to this show. And Spirit once dropped in once again and said, pretty loud and clear, this is what we came for. And to your point, it was the presence with my body that I understood Spirit came for. So the ache that I had in my lungs, the sweat I had on my body, the soreness of my muscles was all so divine because the divine got to experience it through me. And that presence, I love that word. Thank you for offering that because it's never left me since then. And so I went on this deep dive of becoming a yogi, certified personal trainer, nutrition. I owned a gym, all of these things as a side hustle to my corporate career. And I did that for about 10 years, both concurrently. So the origin was in bodybuilding, but it led to so many other things. And then, fast forward to 2021, when my company was acquired, I was laid off, and it never occurred to me to go get a job. I was like, you know what? I can help. I'm uniquely positioned to help because this was COVID, and people were, for the first time for many people, paying attention to their health and their well-being. And I was like, I know this well. And not only were they paying attention to their health and well-being, but spiritually something happened to all of us. We cracked open. We allowed Spirit to, I think, lead our lives more so than we ever had before. And I thought, with what I know about what the body means to Spirit, everyone needs to hear this. Everyone needs to know this. And so that's been the crusade for the last several years. And hence the body ministry.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing that love. It sounds like you're like so filled up by purpose and love and passion. And I want you, I want to tell you that it seems like, yes, bodybuilding was a huge part of reconnecting you to your body and creating this beautiful legacy that you have now. I also wanted to say that I can see that you also found yourself through leaving that organized religion that you knew in your heart wasn't meant for you. And gosh, like separation, divorce, it can be so challenging. And also when you're divorcing a community, this
Oh my gosh.
must have been so hard.
Yeah.
There was another sister who came on this podcast, and she was talking about leaving the Mormon church and like just
Mm,
how beautiful that's been in her spiritual journey, but also how challenging it was specifically with community. And I know that can be like the downside, I guess, but it takes a lot of bravery to just say, you know what, like I'm reclaiming my relationship. I'm hearing that you
yeah.
said somewhere in your heart, I'm going to reclaim my relationship with the divine.
Yeah.
I'm going to allow a space for the divine to show me how they want to be accessed through me and
Yeah.
through bodybuilding. And I love how you were in this moment where you were so physically depleted, yet you were so strong, but you were so depleted in that peak week, right? And allowing yourself to be fully surrendered to the divine and the universe and its mission for you and God's mission for you. What a beautiful offering. And it sounds like you've been on a journey of self-trust and listening, you
Yeah.
know, patience. And I feel like that's makes a lot of sense with your Capricorn ascendant, but also just like knowing a deep knowing that you got to, instead of feeling like all had to happen at once, you allowed it to come together.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say allowed.
Okay.
It's definitely been a journey of patience because I'm not a patient person by nature, but the divine doesn't care. It's like, here's what you need. And I'm so glad because not only did I learn lessons, but the collective was ready. So 12 years ago, when I was realizing, I was like, oh my gosh, I understand now. We're souls that have a body, not bodies that just so happen to have a soul. And all of this was coming aware to me. I was shouting it from the rooftops, like, oh my gosh, everyone listen. And everyone's like, but your abs, look at your trophies. And I'm like, I don't want to talk about, like, something really special is changing inside of me. But the collective that I was around was not ready for that. But I'm even, going to venture to say the collective at large, we weren't in that space. In 2012, it was all about flat abs and a fat ass. And it was very much, grounded in the physical. I mean, I think that's kind of the era of the time, right? It was very much about the physical. And so as I was talking about spirituality, there just wasn't an audience for it. And I believe me, I was out there, not being patient at all, really so captivated by what I was learning and truly feeling like this was my ministry and the gospel that I wanted to share, but literally falling on deaf ears. And so, I guess to your point, there was a certain amount of patience because I kept going. I have never stopped talking about it since I became aware. But it was, I don't want anyone listening to think, oh, she's, so it wasn't an easy patience. It was very much like, I'm ready to go. Let's tell everybody. But it wasn't time yet. There was a lot of refinement that was needed, both in me and again in the collective.
Thank you for correcting me on that. I really appreciate you sharing that. And I think that's really resonant with a lot of people.
Yeah.
Sure a lot of people listening and watching will resonate with that because they might be feeling that way too, whichever period in their life. They're like, why isn't it happening yet? Why isn't it happening yet? And so I guess what I'll ask you then is when you were going through that and you were feeling maybe like unseen in your spiritual journey, and of course there was the emphasis, that was like the skinny girl era, right? Or yeah, I mean, it switched in a couple different body types, but there was such a focus on body. Like, what kept you going when you didn't have that validation, maybe that you might be receiving now with clients or social media or your community?
I don't, I honestly don't feel like I had a choice. And I don't mean in a forceful way, but like this was magical codes given to me by the divine. I don't know how you walk away from that. I don't, and not to be dramatic about it, but you hear about, like I do come from organized religion. And so you hear about stories like Job, right, who lost everything. And you hear stories about people in the past who sacrificed everything, who weren't seen in whatever it was, even Jesus himself, right? Like you hear about stories about people who were not being appreciated and recognized. And we might wonder, why did they even bother? How did they do that? And my story is not Jesus' story or Job's story, so I'm not trying to compare. But the modern day, I guess, first world version of that was kind of what I went through. And I can tell you really easily, it's not a choice. When you're called, you're called. That's all there is to it. I don't. I cannot imagine a world where I'm not preaching this. Um, yeah, I don't even know what that would look like anymore. I don't. Like you said, as a yogi, like kind of once you see it, you can't unsee it, and it's a very similar, kind of perspective that I have on the importance of having a body and what it, and why the divine chooses to come down here in physical form. Yeah, I don't. I wish I had some great words of wisdom other than like when you're called, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think those are great words of wisdom. And I also want to say, just speaking on behalf of the spiritual community that entered spirituality through up here, I really feel like there's two paths that, and then they end up equalizing. I really feel like some of us start in the body and then we work our way up. I feel like some of us start up here and we work our way into the body.
Yeah.
I see right now in spiritual spaces this need of like, let's get our feet on the earth for a second. Let's get our feet on the earth. Let's attend to our physical health. Let's attend to our
Yeah.
souls, because like you shared, it's like that reframe of our souls are having, we're spiritual beings having a human experience in this human body,
Yeah.
in this physical vessel. And so I love this kind of like, it's like balanced approach. I don't want to say grounded because it's also, you're like honoring the divine, but you're bringing the divine into your body. I think is so beautiful. And it makes me curious about your relationship with your body. I don't know if you'd open to sharing, like, what was your relationship with your body like before and after? And I do want to also mention something, if I can.
Mhm.
Earlier, you were talking about how you feel like a lot of women, they actually feel more connected to their body after they have a baby. I was similar to you in the sense I felt more disconnected. And there is actually a shamanic story that says that when a woman is in labor and giving birth, her soul leaves her body momentarily to grab the soul of the baby and bring the baby back into her body. And the baby's soul goes into their body. The baby is born. Then the mother's soul comes back into the mother's body.
I got chills all over my body.
I have it too, and I had to tell you that because I feel like there's this pressure that we have as women where people are like, there's these two extremes. So there's like
Oh,
the bounce back culture, and then
yeah,
you should just be so grateful. You just created life. And, even if whether you're nursing or not, like you're bringing life into this world and
yeah,
your body can do, but it's okay also for mamas listening to not feel that right away because your soul went on a whole mission
wow.
bring your little one or little ones into this life, and she's not going to be the same when she gets.
Yeah,
Not only is your body changing, but you're changing.
yeah, wow. I had never heard that before. It makes me want to cry almost. Like that's
Uh,
very powerful because so many reasons. But yeah, you do go through a certain amount of shame, I think, and feeling very disembodied. To answer your question, what I felt like before, I don't remember having a body. I don't remember paying attention to it. I don't remember caring for it. I don't remember. I really feel like my first like 30 years of my life, I walked around like in my head, completely like in cut off from here down. And yeah, that so and when I think about my children and how well I know their souls, like I knew their souls before knowing them physically. And when you said that, I could see, like, I kind of envisioned like me saying, I see you, here we go, like going and grabbing my children, because it's just the depth of like the knowing that I had about being a mother, their mother specifically. I feel that deeply, deeply in my heart. So thank you for sharing that. But yeah, I was very disembodied prior to, and so it really felt like a wake up. It literally felt like I woke up in my body one day, like, oh my gosh, well, how do I use this thing? Like, what does it do? What is it made for? How do I maintain it? How do I invest in it? Like, how far can it? Like, it is all of these questions, which is what led to that, I don't know, 5 to 6 year kind of deep dive I did into these different modalities because I was just so dang curious about, well, I'm so clear. I'm an eternal soul. I'm going to keep going and going and going. Why do I have this body? And so it made it almost like this divine command to figure that out and how to live in it and how to be human. I felt like I was teaching myself how to be human, because there's no instruction manual, but our body is equipped with so much wisdom if we tap into it. And so that's what that period of time was, even still to today, because I was in my early 30s then, I'm in my mid 40s now, and the body changes a lot. And so on this constant quest of engagement and relationship. And I'm glad that you used that word because it is a relationship that I have with my body. And it is a relationship that I teach other women to have with their bodies, because everything that you think of that happens in a relationship between two people happens between you and your body. We just don't think about it that way.
yeah, I love everything you're saying. And I'm also feeling like it's like choosing to engage even when you feel disconnected. And like even when you're not, like postpartum or as you head into perimenopause or into menopause, or even
Yes.
I wish we could teach our daughters this when they're heading into, when they're starting their menstrual cycle of like these are the times where it's so easy for us to want to leave the body. And
Yeah.
be, "Ooh, like I don't know what's going on, so I'm just going to check out." But it's like almost like a mother to a child. We're talking about like how can I actually be with them because you would if your baby was crying in front of you. I know they're your teenagers now, but if they were crying in front of you even now, you're going to get that mama instinct to go and engage and nurture. How can we do that to ourselves when our bodies are crying
Yeah.
needing us? And I'm hearing that you really do that.
100%. And actually, I think it's my fifth pillar. So I've got 9 pillars of wellness in the body ministry.
Yeah.
And one of them is connection. And it's just doing exactly what you said when the body is crying out, or even when it's happy, regardless of what emotion or what it's trying to communicate. It's being open and receptive to that form of communication. We're taught to null, to not to null, to numb, or to dismiss, or to just completely, like disregard the signs and signals from our body. And I understand why. I'm a human. I'm a woman who lives in this crazy world today, and I totally understand that desire. And there's just so much that we gain when we just pause for a moment to listen. Just listen, just to keep those lines of communication, open with the body. And I'll just add this last piece that part of the origin of Oriara was because I feel like so many of us have been robbed of those lessons about our body. I was raised by my father as a young woman. So when I got my menstrual cycle, I mean, he did his best, right? And I had women in my life, but it wasn't like living at home with your mother. And so, and that's just, one example. There's so many others, I think, like that, whether it's our menstrual cycle, sexual relations in general, eating, move, like there's so many things that we aren't taught about our body as young women. And so I have a daughter, and she has absolutely been a driving factor behind a lot of how I take care of myself. And she loves me, and she wants to be like me still. She's 17, going off to college now, and we have a great relationship. But I want to equip women with um, an opportunity to not just for her to learn about herself and enter in relationship with her body, but to be able to pass something down as a legacy to her daughter. She could say, I learned how to be a woman. I learned how to take care of myself. I learned how to worship myself, because that's ultimately what I teach women to do, is to worship themselves. I learned how to do this with Oriara, and you can too. It's a generational legacy that I think women get a chance to lead in their families. Of this is how you are a woman who prioritizes and takes care of and worships herself. And it just, I really, intend that to be the legacy, not about me, but for every woman to create one in her own family with her self care.
You are breaking cycles, girl. Like own lineage, but for all of us.
Yeah.
We all have this is what we were doing
Yeah.
in our ancestral cultures of origin. Like we said, we don't really know what they are. But at some point, all around the world, women were leading, women were guiding, women were the torchbearers, and we have wisdom, and we were the wisdom keepers. We were passing it to our daughters and our sons too, but we're speaking more on that like matriarchal lineage right now. And so what a beautiful opportunity your daughter has to get to learn from you, and what a beautiful opportunity the world has for the legacy that you're creating. Would you mind spending like the next 10 minutes or even less just going over those 9 pillars of Oriara? I'm super curious about them now that you mentioned them.
Absolutely. So there's 9 pillars spread out across 3 realms. The realms are the mindset, spirit, and the body. So in the first realm, mindset, the first 3 pillars are worth, trust, so self-worth, self-trust, and discipline. The second realm is spirit, and the pillars there are breath, connection, and presence. And in the physical realm, the pillars there are rest, nutrition, and movement. And so those 9 pillars and the body ministry in general was channeled about 8 years ago. I don't honestly remember writing all of it. Um, but it was about a 6-month period where the codes just kept coming through, and I kept writing down and paying attention. And when I kind of finally took a step back and looked at what it was, I was caught off guard. It felt like an opportunity for me to rise. And even still today, it's an opportunity for me to kind of like rise to the occasion of these codes. It's like none of those codes and these 9 pillars aren't from a place of, these are things that I do, so therefore you should do them too. It's from, no, this is directly channeled from the divine feminine. Here's what we're all aiming for. And when I looked at the first pillar, worth, it literally made me catch my breath, because we often don't think about that in general, but specifically as it pertains to being a woman who lives in a woman's body. Like and what our worth is surrounding that, which been hijacked, and it's been vilified, it's been over sexualized, it's been everything but what it really is. And so, that first pillar of understanding your worth just as an expression of the divine feminine is so It makes me catch my breath still. It's so powerful and it's so moving. And it really is the foundation upon which all the other pillars are built. Because if you don't know who you are and you don't value yourself, you can't effectively, or with any, degree of pleasure and joy, navigate life in your body. And so, yeah, those 9 pillars are kind of like a home base when I'm off, as I do, often. I know how to navigate back to wholeness by kind of doing inventory in those 9 areas. How am I? What are my levels of self-worth? Am I trusting myself? Am I performing, discipline and devotion right now? Am I breathing? Am I connected to myself? Am I staying present? Am I resting? Am I nourishing myself? Am I moving my body? These are my little checklist. And in going through that, I know how to navigate back home, back to myself.
You know, tonight before we met, I was leading my coaching group through a meditation on softening because I realized, so I was at the gym this morning and I was feeling triggered in my body because there were no benches available. My body thought we were in like the desert and I was going to get eaten by a lion or something. Like I was literally like this, like walking over to the weight area and looking for a bench. And I was like, and I'm like going to the other weight area and looking for, and I had to say, okay, hold on, Jessica, soften.
Yeah.
Is the world going to die? Am I going to fall apart if I don't have an incline bench right now? Oh, and of course, you know how spirit is. So then I go to do like I was going to do a tricep pulley thing with the rope. And
Yeah.
there was a handle. So I had to make a choice. Am I going to go crazy about this or am I just going to use the handle?
Yeah.
How that
Yeah.
I my body around to still get the same impact with this other tool. And it's so funny. We get to laugh, right? Like,
But I'm sure it was not funny at the time.
why am I freaking out about this? And it's like, okay, where can I check in with? Where am I out of alignment right now? And I'm going to use those 9 pillars next time because I just have to take a deep breath, soften, and be like, what is the deal right now?
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, use those 9 pillars, like I say, as a home base or a North Star, whatever resonates more. But, if there is a woman listening who doesn't know where to start, in terms of like that actual relationship with her body and getting embodied and even softening, the number one thing I tell like 99% of the women that I come in contact with is get some rest. The very first thing is go to sleep, not just sleep, but rest, truly deeply rest. That's where I think the connection with our body actually begins, is through rest. And, resting with a grateful heart and resting with a satisfied heart and a complete heart. A lot of women go to bed with a chip on their shoulder, worried, angry, frustrated, and that's not resting. That might be sleeping, but it's not resting. And like if there's one, prescription I could give every woman would be to rest deeply and to invest in that first before she goes to the gym, before she hires a dietitian, before she goes and gets the, aloe outfits and the Lululemon. Spend some time just investing in your rest. Yeah.
Okay, fine. No. Is there anything that we haven't talked about yet tonight that you want to add?
Well, the one thing that I always like to kind of like capstone everything is this message, which is, when you have a calling on your life, you must protect it with your health. And I think a lot of us know that we're called to whatever, sometimes it's being a mother, sometimes it's being a wife, sometimes it's being a best friend or a daughter or entrepreneur, a boss, whatever your calling is. We all have different ones and they're all valid. Um, and oftentimes I hear women talking about, I die for my kids and I die for my clients and I die for all of these things. And my response is always is who's asking that of you? No one wants you to die. We kind of need you here. The call to action isn't dying. The call to action is to live healthy for them. Will you live healthy for the things that you love? And so I want every woman to carry that with her, that you have a calling, whether you know it or not, whether you're actively pursuing that or not, you're here for a reason. And whatever that reason so happens to be, we need you to be healthy for it, to see it all the way through. The it can't reach its potential if you're not reaching yours, through your health and well-being. So please carry that in your heart.
1000%. What a great way to end this episode tonight. Thank you so much for your time and energy, Cassandra. I don't know about listeners, but I'm feeling super activated. So if you liked this episode, ladies, like, share, subscribe to the podcast, rate it. That will help get this wild wisdom out with other sisters who need it. And if you have any questions for Cassandra, feel free to leave them in the comments here on whatever platform you're using to watch. I'm sure she would love to hear what you are curious about. If you want to connect with her, we'll share her socials here in a moment and in the show notes. And I'm so curious for you, Cassandra, how can people work with you if they feel called to deepen in this way?
Yeah. So I have a membership. It's called the Self Care Collective. And we do just that. I go through those 9 pillars of wellness. There's a different pillar every month on top of there being other self-care practices that I invite women to participate in, whether it's learning about nutrition or movement or moon phase self-care practices. We're really big about moon phases in my world. But yeah, the self-care collective is an opportunity to learn how to take care of yourself. And if there's any self-care practices that you currently have that you would just like some support and accountability with, you're more than welcome to bring those into the collective. But it's where you go to learn how to fall in love again with your body.
We're big on moon signs here too. So I think that I'm sure there will be a lot of people listening that would resonate with that. So I'll put the links to everything that Cassandra's offering in the show notes so you can refer to that as well. And yeah, I'd say that's a wrap. Thank you again for your time. And I look forward to weaving with you again sometime in the future.
Thanks so much.
Taking the time to listen to this episode of the Wild Wisdom podcast. Really enjoyed this podcast. Go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to spread this wisdom to other sisters who might need it.